Good morning, everyone. In this video, we'll be simplifying fractions by factorising. Before I start with these two examples, I thought I'd reflect on some of the strategies and tools you have in your factorising toolkit at the moment. We know how to factorise by taking out a highest common factor. We know how to factorise by finding the difference of perfect squares. We know how to factorise a four-term expression using grouping. And we now know how to factorize what we call a monic trinomial by finding two terms that multiply to make C and add together to make B. A trinomial just means there's three terms, so ax squared is one term, bx is a second term, c is a third term, and monic means that the a is equal to 1. So these are the four ways we know how to factorize currently. There are more. But for this lesson and for today's activity, you'll be focusing on these four. And you'll need to apply all four depending on the circumstance. So in this first example, it says x squared minus x takes 6 over x plus 2. The first part I would look at is you need to factorize. And you look through your toolkit and you think about how am I going to factorize this top expression, x squared minus x minus 6. And I'm going to use what you covered in last lesson. We need to find two numbers that multiply to make -6 and add together to make -1. And when I put them in my brackets, I know it's going to look something like this. So I'm just going to draw them in now. The x plus 2 stays on the bottom. I know there's going to be an x here. And I know there's going to be an x here. The second part I definitely know is these two numbers, whatever they are in the brackets, multiply to make -6, which tells me that one has to be a positive and one has to be a negative. Because whatever it is, when they multiply together, it's going to make -6. I then go through what are the factors of -6, or what are the factors of 6. It could be 1 and 6, or 2 and 3. But these things have to add together to make -1. So that tells me it has to be this one, and the negative has to be a 3, and the positive will be a 2. We're almost done here. And now we can see we have an x plus 2 on the top and an x plus 2 on the bottom. They simply cancel out because they would equal 1, and you're left over with x minus 3. And that is indeed the answer. The second example looks far more complex, but my advice to you is just because you see a complex question doesn't mean you can't start. Don't be scared of these types of questions because you have the tools and you have all the skills you need to break it down into smaller parts. The first thing I'm going to recognize is, well, I'm just going to start with this left-hand fraction here, the x squared minus 9. You go through your toolkit and you recognize that is the difference of perfect squares. And I'll just go ahead and factorize that straight away. It's x plus 3, x minus 3. And that's because I recognize it's the difference of perfect squares, and I know that's how it's factorized. The 3 and the 3, -3 gives me the -9. I then go through my toolkit again, and it's a monic trinomial, and I know how to factorize them as well. So whatever numbers are in these two brackets have to multiply to make -15. And I know there's only a couple of factors that do that. There's 1 and 15. And there's 3 and 5. And then I know that they have to add together to make this -2. So it tells me this is the factor pair I want. I know 1 is positive and 1 is negative because there's a -15 at the end. And then I know the 3 has to be positive, and then 5 is negative because when they add together, they make -2. So that's this first fraction done. Let's go ahead and look at the second fraction. Here's another monic trinomial. So it's the same method again. There's going to be an x, there's going to be another x. I know they have to multiply to make -5. Well, that's an easy one. These are the only factors of 5. It's a prime number. I know 1 is going to be positive and 5 is going to be negative because when they add together, they make this -4. On the bottom, This is when I go through my toolkit, it's one of these ones. All I have to do is take out the highest common factor. So I take out a 2, and I'm left over with x minus 3. I think having your toolkit written on the side somewhere just to remind you what types of factorizations you know how to do is a really good idea. With fractions, if there's a term on the top and it's the same term on the bottom or expression on the top, they cancel out. So the x plus 3 and the x plus 3 cancel out. And look over here, there's an x minus 3 and an x minus 3 over here. And there's an x minus 5 and an x minus 5, which leaves me with an x plus 1 on the top and a 2 on the bottom. And that is when you start off with quite a large looking thing that you need to factorize, often it turns out to be something quite nice when you simplify it. So that's how you simplify fractions by factorizing. You think about what tools you know in terms of factorizing, and then you look at each expression and you just slowly break it down. Don't be scared of these big questions. You can just take it step by step like I did here. And often these types of questions end up with something quite nice and simple.